Hello everybody, this is Lesson 4, Part 2, Lesson 4, Part 2, Rec 250 online, Summer Session 1. Lesson 4, Part 2, we're starting off in the note packet, and in the note packet this is going to be on page 15. Note packet, page 15, and we're talking about debriefing. We're talking about the importance of the discussion period, the time where you give individuals, groups, chances to reflect on their behavior, on their thoughts, on their participation levels within a group or with whatever they're doing. This is where the facilitator asks questions in hopes to bring out more reflection and positive introspection from group members and individuals. As we talked about before, you're responsible 2 and not 4. So if you, the best thing that you can do is provide a supportive environment, ask good quality questions, allowing time for responses, and if they don't respond, there's not a lot more you can do after that within this leadership style. Okay, within the facilitator style, you're facilitating a process, a growth process, which happens in part due to their motivation to change or their motivation to assist in the helping process, where they'll look inside and say, oh gosh, you know what, I could have been nicer, I could have been communicated more effectively in that activity, could have been a better team player, you know, etc., etc. Now, everyone's not going to have an issue to deal with after every activity, or you know, all of your players on your sports team, you know, they're not going to have issues to deal with after every drill or after every practice. So it's not an issue-focused argument. It's just one of the easier ways to explain the need for debriefing and the need for asking good questions to help bring or help facilitate a learning process. Now, you can facilitate a learning process through a debrief by about things that aren't as introspective, that aren't as interpersonal, things that are more on the surface. Not a problem. Learning is still happening, and growth may still happen. So we're looking at page 15, and here's what you have are some sample debriefing questions. And it looks at the debrief having 3 primary levels. 3 primary levels. So on page 15 and 16, it shows you that the opening level, the reflection level, and the action level. So feel free to read through that a little bit later. On page 17, there's a workshop debrief, or a debrief where you actually use 2 levels or 2 steps, the identification level and the action level, to make a debrief go a little bit quicker. But let's go to page 18, and for the purposes of this class, or probably what I think is the clearest page in your note packet on debriefing, is going to be the sample debriefing questions here on page 18. What I want you to focus on is the what, the so what, and the now what. Now, this can be mumbly-jumbly and confusing, but if you stick with the actual level of questions, or the category of question, or what the question is actually going after, it's a good way to keep yourself focused during a debrief. So say you sit down with a group of players on your team, and after a practice, and you're having a debrief, a discussion, and you need to bring out some particular team building issues that you believe your team is having. They're struggling with some communication, so you want to get to the heart of that matter. Well, a facilitator has to begin to open up the discussion. It's very difficult for a facilitator in this particular style to sit down and say, okay, you guys aren't communicating, what's the problem? Alright. Now, it may be to the point where you have built up enough relationship and trust, okay, you have a strong enough relationship with all the players, and the trust level is high enough where you can simply sit down and get right to the heart of the matter very quickly. And that's great if that can happen. But what we've been talking about in this class thus far is process-based, and we've been discussing that we've been discussing the ropes course. And the ropes course was something where they took groups that really didn't know each other, or didn't know each other on a very deep level at all, and only worked with them for about 6 hours doing these activities. So when you're working with a more resistant group, or a group that doesn't know each other as well, you really need these 3 levels. Now, if you're really tight with the group, there's a lot of trust there, you can usually go right to the action level question or the reflection level question. So let's say your group doesn't know each other well, and we'll go through all three formal stages of the debrief, the discussion. First is the what. Okay, the what is a very simple question. Simple questions are not intimidating. They are easy for people to respond to. They don't require a whole lot of thought or a whole lot of introspection. What you're getting is warming them up, breaking the ice, getting them used to answering some questions that you are dictating. So for the what to happen is what happened. So if you're having you just did a team building activity with a group, you sit down and you can't think of any sweet sounding question. If you get nervous, all you have to do is say, okay, well, what happened? Review the activity for me. What did you do? Simply recall what happened. Okay, well, they might say, well, gosh, well, you made us do this activity where we had to do X, Y, and Z. Perfect. What you just did is you got a review about your activity, and you'll find out whether they liked it or not. But most importantly, you got them talking. And you get them talking in this kind of debriefing environment where the facilitator asks questions and wants the group to respond. And so after you get some of those responses, you're building this atmosphere and this environment that, oh, okay, you respond, people, it's okay to talk, so you can respond to folks that do share in the debrief in the first what phase as being oh, that was positive, or oh, thank you for that response, or I really appreciate your insight. That's great. So you're giving some feedback. And then you move into the second phase. The second phase is the so what. And the so what is simply put, what about what you just did is important. So we're out here together. You guys just played this crazy game with all these different props, and I just made you recap it. Now, why do you think I made you recap it? Or why was it important that you played this game to begin with? Well, we're out here because we're supposed to be team building. Or we're out here because we were having some issues in the office place about, we weren't getting our tasks done, we weren't communicating effectively, et cetera, et cetera. So you begin to discuss that. What's in the now with the group? Or, a small group of individuals. What is happening now? And so your questions in the so what category, as you can see on page 18, is what did your group need to do to succeed? What did your group do well? What needs to work? How did the group accomplish their goal, etc., etc. And these bring out a deeper level of questioning, a deeper level of responses that really pushes individuals to begin to look at their behavior and their place within the team, within the group. Then the third step, as you can see there, is the now what. And this is the most critical step and the most important step for any group, and the most difficult for an interpersonal skill-based facilitator to master. Is that now you must take what they just talked about, which was basically their feelings and kind of their experience and what just happened after the game, after the activity, whatever it is they just did, that you're running a discussion after, is getting them to transfer what they learned in the game or the activity into real life. Okay, so that's why it's stated the now what. Well, now what do you do? Now what's important? So, okay, so maybe one thing or a couple things they talked about in the so what section, or step 2, they need to talk about what they're going to do, take that information and go to the now what. The now what, being tricky, is trying to get them to relate it to life experiences. Remember we talked last week how activities that a group is doing with a leader must be relevant, real and meaningful and relevant. If they're not, you're not interested. And that really goes for a lot of things that you do in life. It must be relevant, personal to your life for you to actually expend the energy off the couch to do it. So we're looking at this now what phase, the step 3, or the now what, the closing or the ending of your discussion, is the most powerful, getting the group to transfer their learning from what just happened to the real the workplace or the real world. So, for example, you've got a group of corporate execs. They did a team building activity, and after that during that activity, they found that they were really struggling with who was in charge, which is a classic common example for a bunch of cooks in the kitchen. And they discussed the need for some kind of order or some type of leadership breakdown that they could refer to, so they knew who was in charge of what part of the activity or what part of the learning or what part of the group process. And in the now what, they realized that the similar things happen in their company. When there's serious problems, most of them jump into kind of hyper leadership mode, and they end up kind of over dominating each other and spending more time getting things done that should take less time. So this is a problem, something they want to fix. So they saw this very clearly in the activity, and now you as a facilitator need to help them through step 3, which is the now what. So you say, okay, well, now you've recognized that you guys have a communication issue in the leadership department. Everybody's stepping up and competing with each other of kind of who's the biggest leader. So how do you fix that? And that's when they have to brainstorm. They have to come up with goals and statements that say, this is how we're going to fix it, and this is how we're going to put our new process into practice today and when we get back to the workplace. Very important. And so that's what that last level does, is really tie everything together so that the activity was fruitful for them. So they really learned something because they actually have an action plan now. So that is the now what segment.